here we go. Let's do it. Okay. An ode of sorts to my 2014 Harley-Davidson Fat Boy. Or is it a paean? It doesn't matter. I was back on the Fat Boy. That's what matters. And good Lord, did it feel good. I was back to being an outlaw and a badass. Not really, but... it was the first time on the lovely beast since completing a 2,500-mile adventure around California with my German buddy Basti. We started our serendipity tour in Long Beach, where my brother lives, and spent the first 3 days going up Highway 1. The weather couldn't have been better for October, and Highway 1, well, it's Highway 1, one of the most impressive roads I'll ever know, I'm sure. And it was relatively free of traffic. And I was on my Harley, the first Harley I've ever owned. It was a blessing that traffic was light because I embarrassed myself when we hit the twisties. It was really an affront to my ego, I suppose you could say. You could see that I hadn't been on a bike for 25 years or so, except for the 8 hours I had spent on a Honda Rebel 300, a great bike at an introductory motorcycle course, a refresher course for me, plus the 10-odd hours I had spent on the Fat Boy before we hit the twisties. I was so nervous going around those tight turns. You don't perform well when you're nervous doing something, especially riding. I did manage to relax after a while when my inner voice forgot about spat and made me a Pollyanna, and I could enjoy the ride. But I still took those curves slowly, but I was smooth. I wasn't close to being as terrified as when I first rode away from Mitchell's Modesto Harley-Davidson. The 103 twin cam wasn't anything like the soft purr of the Rebel 300, especially with the Vance and Hines big shots staggered. The Fat Boy sounds ferocious, and I was convinced that if I twisted the throttle just a bit too much, boom, I'd rip my arms off and it would simply just roar away without me. I barely went the speed limit all the way home. Incredibly foolish looking back on it now. It took some time to get used to riding the beast, and at over 700 pounds, it is by far the heaviest bike I've ever ridden. But fear was a part of the attraction to Harley right from the get-go. I had initially wanted to get a new bike, a Sportster Iron 1200. Then it was the Triumph Bobber, beautiful-looking bike, and Shade Tree Surgeon soured Triumph for me because the company didn't care about a charity he or a buddy of his was doing, and not to mention that it's not really British at all. Then it was a Moto Guzzi V7, then the BMW R18 captured me, then the Sportster 48, then a Street Bob, and I kept going back and forth between all those bikes, and even a Kawasaki Z900 RS was at the top of my list for a while. And for 2 years, I drove my buddy Gentleman crazy talking about the different bikes and their specs and constantly changing my mind. I had a new favorite every week. But deep down, I knew it was going to be a Harley, for sure. And a big reason had to do with what Scully, a salesman at Mitchell's, said to me about a year ago as I was sitting on a street bob. You can get the BMW or the Triumph, and they're great bikes, but it won't be a Harley. Those words stayed with me, and I couldn't help but thinking of my watches. My Rolex, my Tudor Black Bay GMT, and yeah, I'm happy with my Tudor. It's an excellent watch. I wear it all the time now. more than the Rolex, but it isn't a Rolex. It's just not the same. And I knew it would have been like that if I had opted for one of the other bikes. I would have had that bike, and I would have been thinking to myself, but it ain't a Harley. So ultimately I was debating between the 48 and the Street Bob. The Street Bob, both of them just kind of frightened me, just the way they sounded. But then I saw the 2014 Fat Boy, and it only had 7,000 miles on it. The leather bags from the leather works out of Stockton, a Mustang seat, and those glorious pipes. And the former owner, a police chief in a nearby town, must have been a garage queen because the bike was impeccable and looked brand new. Plus, well, I don't know, as soon as I saw it, I knew. I just knew. I was like, okay, that's your bike, and it's a badass bike. And I'll never forget the first time I took it around the neighborhood to practice riding. Oh, kids waved to me, and quite a few men working in their front yards stopped what they were doing and gave nods or had dreamy looks spread across their faces. You could just see, them going someplace else. All that noise and beauty, call for adventure, for an outlaw life, living by your own rules and being a badass. And I'm sure some of those men imagined I was an outlaw and a badass. Even though I'm neither. But it really is. It's a bike that sets a man dreaming. And the first ride around the hood was also when I discovered that I shouldn't ride too close to a parked car, or I'd set off the alarm. It's a simple bike, and on our tour of California, Calaveras Big Trees, Yosemite, Kernville, Joshua Tree, Palm Springs, Basti was on a 2017 BMW R1200 GS, a fantastic bike. Oh, wow, that bike can do anything. And in comparison, the Fat Boy was a tractor. And I started referring to it as my tractor. The tractor was slow and loud, but damn, everywhere we went, the tractor, it was the star. And even Basti became a big fan of the Fat Boy. He said the BMW was always urging him to go fast, whereas the Fat Boy, he could see that I could just relax on it and take in what was around me. Sure, it's great getting on the throttle, but the tractor's sweet spot is cruising around 55, 60. It's just perfect then. It's a cruiser. It's got a lot of bark, but really not so much bite. And it's comfortable and great for riding around town here in Destino. I don't need to go fast. Well, of course, I've fallen in love with the damn thing, But I think I've also become a garage queen too, something I just did not want to do. After our tour, I must have spent about, 10 hours washing it with my dad, who really loves it. It reminds him of, his classic cars. And then waxing it and shining up all that chrome with Lemon Pledge. Yes, Lemon Pledge. It works terrific for chrome, which I never would have imagined, but, I read about it in different forums and had to give it a try. And I'm sure I would have fallen in love with any of the other bikes I was looking at. It's wonderful to be on a bike again after so many years. Driving a car is like watching the boob tube, on a bike. It's just, you become alive. All your senses are just, it's like being plugged in, waking up. It's just wonderful. So I'm glad I got it, and yeah, let's see. Let's see where the ride takes us. But, now I'm back in Frankfurt, and we'll be away from the Fat Boy probably until spring. But, yeah, I guess enjoy the ride wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Yeah, that's all that's really